Hey friends, I saw an article in the Daily Beast that seemed like a good follow up from the last video I did where I asked whether or not we think Prince Harry is briefing the press against Meghan Markle. I think he is. I think he's getting annoyed. So let's take a look here. Okay, so the start of this drama was that Harry and Meghan went to Kris Jenner's birthday, a big Kardashian bash, on Remembrance Day when the rest of the family was honoring veterans. Harry was wearing the Remembrance Day poppy, Meghan wasn't. And then they just did a lot of unforced errors trying to respond to the criticism. So let's take a look here at what the Daily Beast has to say about it, friends, and then I'll give you some commentary. A few vanishing Instagram posts and a bogus consent form expose in perfect miniature how the Sussexes continue to misread the celebrity attention economy they're trying to dominate. In a week when they were also accused of fibbing to the palace, this sorry saga of fiascos is an abject parable in brand mismanagement. Okay, let me explain the accused of fibbing to the palace part real quick. Harry recently, his reps had a meeting with King Charles's reps to try and come to better relations. And one of the things supposedly that Harry offered them is an olive branch. They say olive branch so much. I get sick of hearing the word, but you know what? They probably get sick of hearing my Americanisms too. It's no big deal. But it was going to be an olive branch from Harry that he would share his schedule with them so that they didn't have conflicting appearances. Because to the royal family, that doesn't sound like that big of a deal to most of us that, oh, two people did two things at the same time. However, because their currency is publicity of worldwide headlines in order to fund the charitable work that they do and keep their monarchy going, they try to let one person at a time be in the headlines. That's why they schedule appearances very carefully. And while one is doing a big outing or tour or event, the others kind of stay inside basically, or stay low key, go to private events where they won't be photographed and that type of thing, so as to not take the headlines away from the one who's doing a big thing at the moment. Well, Harry went to this thing in Toronto at the same time William was having an event, big event in another country. And Harry first tried to say, "Well, we informed the palace ahead of time," and the palace responded. They're like, "We didn't hear anything from anybody." And then he was like, "Well, this was a Toronto scheduled thing, and I had no control over it." So, they keep getting caught. The more they try to explain, the more they don't make sense. It's a very Gypsy Rose Blanchard PR situation, friends. I realize the Sussexes didn't murder anyone like Gypsy Rose Blanchard, but whenever it comes to their PR, both of them, it's constant unforced errors. Like if they didn't even try to explain these things and just let the waves of backlash roll over and subside, they'd probably be better off, both of them. Okay, back to the article. It says the Sussexes lurch so effortlessly from one or unforced error to the next that singling out one particular branding or PR disaster is difficult. That's the dang truth, friends. But a week when they have been revealed to be lying to the press, lying to the palace, gaslighting the public, annoying the Kardashians, and shamelessly sucking up to Jeff Bezos, and doing it all very, very badly probably qualifies. This is the full story, which has been unfolding in real time on the Royalist Substack all of this week, of how a few deleted Instagram pictures, a phantom consent form, and some wickedly effective mendacious meddling by the men in gray suits have reopened the central question that has stalked the Sussexes since they left the royal fold. Can people believe what they say? In my opinion, friends, it appears to be no. Then they start in with the timeline. The week starts well. This time last week, Harry and Meghan were, one assumes, celebrating a straightforward celebrity win over their Sunday breakfast smoothies after scoring a coveted invite to Kris Jenner's Bond-themed 70th at Jeff Bezos' Los Angeles mansion. Here we got Meghan posing with Kim, intentionally posing for a photo. That's important to remember, friends. So as they say, put a pin in that. Got Harry looking kind of doofy in the background. Well, I gotta say, friends, love her or hate her, Kim knows how to pose, don't she? She got them angles down. Okay, back to the article. True, there was some criticism in the UK papers that contrasted images of the couple gliding into the Bezos Jenner mega bash with pictures of Kate, William, and their kids marking Remembrance Sunday and the next day the next day in the UK, marking Remembrance Sunday the next day in the UK, but plenty of people around the world went out the night before. No one would argue that the millions of people who have sacrificed their lives for their countries over the past 110 years did so in order that later generations might be miserable. For the Sussexes, the symbolism of being at the party was obvious and useful. Here they were at the epicenter of American celebrity power: Kardashians, Bezos, Zuckerberg, Gates, Oprah, Snoop. From Meghan, now professionally entangled with Amazon via her cameo in a new film, it was a clean, shiny rebuttal to the claim that Hollywood is over them. Yeah, because that had been out in a report about a week before, friends, on page 6. But then things take a turn for the worse. Then on Tuesday, the story twisted. People noticed that some images from inside the party posted by Kim Kardashian and Kris Jenner had vanished from their Instagram feeds. Trouble was, the digital toothpaste was already out of the tube. Predictably, screenshots of the photos, which showed Meghan looking on and Harry looking bleary eyed and unaware that he was entering a semiotic battlefield, which up to that point had been largely ignored by everyone except the most devoted Redditors, now spread like wildfire. There's the Meg getting a hug from someone. Harry cut off in the background again. Pretty soon, briefings from the Sussex camp began wafting into journalists' inboxes. The couple, it was said, had been presented with consent forms before the party and had ticked the no social media box. The implication was that someone on Kim and Chris's social team had made a mistake in posting the images and had now simply honored their clearly stated wishes and removed them. The Sussex's shambolic operation had underestimated how ruthlessly efficient the Kardashians one is. Reps for the family flatly told anyone who asked that no such forms existed. There were no consent forms, they said. None. Why the rapid rebuttal? Because their team understands that when people lie about teeny tiny things, the mind naturally wanders to what they might do when the stakes are higher. When reporters went back to the Sussex camp to clarify how this squared with the previous narrative, the shutters came down. The talkative sources abruptly stopped talking. There would be no further comment on this ridiculous little flap. On one level, it was all delightfully trivial. On another, as the week rolled on, it began to look like the purest distillation yet of the Sussex problem. A couple who have made truth their brand, appearing to bend reality over something as petty as party optics. Because whatever did or did not happen with the paperwork, one fact is beyond dispute. Harry and Meghan asked for the pictures to be taken down. I'm breaking in here to say yes, they did that after they intentionally posed for pictures. Okay, back to the article. The interesting question is why their camp then felt compelled to erect such a brittle justification, one that could be knocked down in a single phone call to a Kardashian publicist. Why not just say nothing? Why produce a story that could be disproved? Again, I'm breaking in to say that's where I see so many similarities to their errors in public relations and Gypsy Rose Blanchard's errors in public relations, because she constantly tells lies in her defense that can be so easily disproved. It's like, why did you even do it? Especially whenever you're reading her earlier stuff, and it's clear that she had the PR coaching to know that authenticity was going to have to be a very big thing because of her circumstances with being a matricider, but she just lies. And the Sussexes have accepted awards for standing up to racism. They've accepted awards for, being truth tellers and blah, blah, blah. But they get caught in petty little lies all the time. And when it happens and people question them on it, their usual reaction is, there are bigger problems in the world, much like Gypsy Rose's camp. Okay, back to the article, friends. To answer that, you have to understand the world in which they now live. Attending Kris Jenner's birthday party at Jeff Bezos' house is not, for this set, a social occasion in the way that normal people understand the term. It's a luxury trade fair in which the product is one's own image, a networking symposium disguised as a soiree. Every photograph is a marketing data point. Megan understands this instinctively, which is why, if she truly never wanted to see those images online, she could have arrived via the discreet private interests used by some guest and politely declined to pose with Kim Kardashian. She did neither. Megan needed the upside. Proof of continued relevance, a rejoinder to the whispering about their exile from the A list. So, why take the pictures down? A former colleague at the Invictus Games told me that Harry was right to fear the downside, saying that being seen to hobnob with the Kardashians in Remembrance Week was dangerous for his position at the charity, which some say is under threat. This raises the fascinating possibility that Harry, who just told us last week that social media was run by evil men trying to steal our children's minds, was also told that they had ticked no on consent forms to get him to go to a party attended by Mark Zuckerberg. Breaking in here to say, what do y'all think about that, friends? I think that's a pretty likely theory because she always has him doing stuff that twists around everything that he's ever said he will or will not do. So let me know what y'all think about that, friends. I think it's very likely. I think Meghan thought the Kardashians wouldn't dispute it if she put it out. Okay, back to the article. By the end of the working week, with the Kardashians having effectively accused them of fabricating stories, the Sussexes' relationship with the truth was under fresh scrutiny. The phantom consent form neatly plugged into existing doubts. The Oprah claim that they were secretly married 3 days before their Windsor wedding, later refuted by the Archbishop of Canterbury. The late Queen's coldly devastating response to their racism allegations. Recollections may vary. There was some terrific analysis of the whole situation by Bethany Frankel, who told the Toast podcast that the Kardashian kerfluffle was not an isolated fiasco, but the latest misstep in a badly mismanaged brand. She described Harry and Meghan as people who have been riding between two worlds for a long time and suggested that if they'd been properly handled, if they played chess instead of Instagram, it would have been a much different outcome. They tried to cram 50 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag, she said, attempting to sell victimhood, triumph, glamour, exile, privacy, and exposure all at once. Yep, they sure did. And those things don't go together, friends. You got to choose one or two. Back to the article. But the killer line came from Megan's past. Years ago, Bethany had known Megan's ex husband, Trevor Ingleson, well enough to swap flirtations and work gossip. When she first saw Harry and Meghan together in US Weekly, she texted Trevor, "Do you think she'll close?" His reply was instant, "Oh, she'll close." Bethany declined to elaborate, but the phrase now nags in the air, a cynical cone that, for many, explains more of the Sussex saga than any palace briefing ever has. Bethany then coolly mapped where the couple now sit in the celeb hierarchy. The Obamas should have been their people, she said. George and Amal Clooney came to their wedding. Where are they now? Those sets have drifted away, and Harry and Meghan find themselves chasing relevance at Kardashian parties they don't want anyone to see them at. Lauren Sanchez, Bethany said, is Meghan Markle with no rules, a honey badger who doesn't give a damn and doesn't pretend to not love the money in the flesh. Meghan is trying to be all these things at once, and Bethany suggested, as a result, we don't know who she is. All of this would have been bad enough as a self inflicted Montecito drama. And then they twist again. But on Saturday, the palace joined in. The Times of London reported the Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace officials, aka the men in gray suits, were baffled by claims from Harry's team that they had been briefed as a courtesy about his trip to Toronto the week before. Here, Harry met soldiers from regiments connected to the king and queen in the very week that William began a major 5-day tour of Brazil. Staff in both households told the Times they'd had no advance warning at all. When the royalist asked Harry's office precisely when this alleged courtesy call had been made and to whom and in what form, there was no answer. The story might, in different circumstances, have been dismissed as the usual turf war between dueling private offices, but coming at the end of a week in which the Kardashians had already effectively accused the Sussexes of making up a story, the Times piece landed with particular force. Once again, the refrain in royal circles was very similar. Recollections may vary. Wisely, I think, Harry's office chose not to produce anything, email, message, or note that might prove their version true. The Toronto row, the Kardashian fiasco, both unfolded around Remembrance Sunday, a period that, for all concerned, is supposed to be sacrosanct. Yet recent royal history is littered with Remembrance Week fallouts. Add it all together, and you get something closer to an x ray of the failure of the Sussex project than an unfortunate bad press cycle. Their appeal post Megxit was supposed to rest on two pillars: authenticity and escape. They would purge their trauma by telling their truth about what it was like inside the House of Windsor, and then they would build a freer, more honest existence outside of it. Once again, to my Gypsy Rose Watcher friends, doesn't that sound familiar? She was going to purge her trauma by telling the truth about what it was like in the books and her memoir, and then move on to an authentic existence. But what do we see? Train wreck after train wreck, lie after lie, disaster after disaster. Anyway, back to the article. Yet here they are, being publicly contradicted on matters of fact by the Kardashians on one flank and the palace on the other. They look less like liberated truth tellers than people who, finding themselves trapped in a hyper-managed hall of mirrors, have resorted to fiddling with the angles. The smarter play is obvious in retrospect. Arrive at the Bezos Jenner bash quietly via the private entrance, accept that some images would get out, and let the story be a simple one. They're still in the Hollywood mix. Make the Toronto trip, issue a worthy statement about veterans in sports, and say nothing at all about who was or wasn't warned in advance. Exactly, friends. Like it really didn't have to be that complicated. They could have just let it blow over with that. Okay, back to the article. Instead, the couple have an incredible knack of presenting their asses for a good kicking while reinforcing the harshest critiques of them: brutal sensitivity, chronic overcalculation, and a self sabotaging, dishonest relationship with the truth in service of their own myth making. Again, that sounds familiar. Harry and Meghan's nightmare 7 days did not just give their enemies fresh material, it exposed how fragile the central premise of their post royal lives has become. Of course, the elevator can always keep going down. Things got even worse on Saturday when the Daily Beast's founding editor, Tina Brown, gave an interview to the New York Times in which she absolutely nailed the couple to the floor. Brown said, I have never seen anybody in professional life make as many mistakes as Meghan has. And unfortunately, Harry is not the brightest bulb either. So he thought that Meghan would be his great sort of guide in the big wide world beyond Buckingham Palace, as it were. And it turns out that Meghan makes one terrible professional decision after another. And now they are sort of pariahs everywhere, it seems, which is a very difficult situation for them because America was supposed to be the place that paid the bills. Bethany Frankel's throwaway text with Trevor Ingleson feels like a verdict hanging over the whole enterprise. Unless the Sussexes can find a more honest, less tortured way of engaging with worlds they insist on straddling, royalty and celebrity, duty and cash, podium and party, the thing that gets closed may not be the deal, but the audience's willingness to believe a word they say. What do y'all think, friends? I really agree with a lot of that there. It's the same unforced errors over and over again, but I also think it's Harry and Meghan turning against each other some. I really do think that Meghan likely told Harry something untrue about a consent form to get him to go. And then that's why, whenever he realized that that didn't happen and the pictures were out, Meghan thought he would just accept it. And when he didn't, he probably had a big old fit. She had to turn around and embarrass herself and ask the Kardashians to take them down, which obviously annoyed the Kardashians because it's making the attention about Meghan and Harry and not about Chris's birthday party. Which is the whole issue the royal family has with them. Every time the royal family is trying to do something, whether it's private celebration like Eugenie's wedding, where Meghan decided to announce her pregnancy and take all the attention, or whether it's Harry going to a Veterans Day event while William is doing his Brazil tour, they always have to do that. And now they're doing it to the Kardashians, and the Kardashians aren't as polite about that shit. They don't give a fuck when you start messing with their publicity. So let me know what y'all think in the comments, friends, about not only Harry and Meghan, but the Gypsy Rose comparisons, and I will talk to you soon. Have a good day.